Yo, hello, hello. Hi, everyone in chat.
Hello.
It's good to see everyone
Hi.
here. Yeah, sweet. We'll get straight into it. But yeah, my name's Isaac. I'm the events officer for the AIE Online and Canberra campuses, and today I'm joined with Zane. How's it going, Zane?
Hi. I'm doing pretty well. My name's Zane. I'm from RepairFour Interactive. I'm the one of the founders, one of the four founders, and I'm the lead designer for everything we're currently doing.
Awesome. Yeah,
Been invited
sweet.
onto this stream to chat a bit about game design, game dev, and what we're working on.
Yeah, some really cool stuff is the answer to that. Yeah, sweet. I guess, yeah. Tell us a bit more about yourself for the audience that don't know much about you.
Okay, so I've been working in the game industry for about, it's been like 4 or 5 years now.
Mm.
I studied at AIE when I was 17 probably or so, 16, 17 or so. And
Mm.
I finished studying the GDML when I was, I think, 18 or 19. Timeline's a bit wonky for me, to be honest, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's mainly what I did. I went into the industry via doing the AIE course, graduating, meeting a group of people that I wanted to work with, starting an indie company with them, which is RepairFour Interactive. And we've been doing that pretty much since as our, I guess, Golden Goose is our main project that we've been working on together.
Yeah, yeah.
Trying to
Yes.
think of anything else that's interesting about me, particularly. Uh,
Well, how about
can't really
tell us
think
a
of
bit
any.
more about your role at RepairFour? So what's like your day-to-day kind of?
So I am the lead designer for
Mm.
the projects we work on, and something of a team leader in a lot of places in the team.
Mm.
I'm often managing what people are doing, looking at what needs to be done for the future of the project. Early on, when we were still forming, I was responsible for a lot of the communication between different people and getting people accustomed toward interacting with each other, alongside just kind of figuring out how we're going to run this ship. Since when we put it all together, it was still, four of
Mm.
us were just students that had just finished graduating, and then we started working in a team together. So we had a bit to go before we could end up working properly as like a cohesive unit, I guess.
Mm. Yeah,
Because working
yeah.
outside of like dedicated class hours takes a lot of time to like, I guess, get used to.
Mm.
Not having like a deadline and like a set amount of time that you need to work with people, because this isn't our full-time job at the moment. It's our sort of part-time thing that we're doing on the side while we work on funding the company, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Learning to do that and balancing it with like work and life is very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So early on, we were kind of my job to get everyone into place with like, okay, here's what we need to get done. Here's how we can show progress for that. Here's how we can do X and X with that.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, right.
And then, of
Awesome.
course, all the typical game design stuff of like designing the game. I was the initial concept and creative lead for the project we're currently working on, which I think we're going to talk about a little bit later, and I think is also
Mm.
the name of the stream. But
Yeah, 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 yeah.
mystery aside,
Mystery side. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
mystery aside, I was the creative lead for that project.
Mm.
I don't want to say I came up with the idea because that's a bit of a misnomer, I think, for
Yeah, yeah.
how it tends to go down in the industry. But
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
was the main driving force between like, okay, here's what this game's going to be, here's how it's going to work, and generally the guy that would sign off on how everything was going to work by the end of things.
Yeah, gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, sweet, awesome. And I guess taking a step back from all of that, how did you find your interest in design? Tell us a story.
Oh, so it must have been like, I want to say like 10 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
I purchased a game on the PS3 called Little Big Planet 2.
Nice,
And it
good
kind of
game.
all went downhill from there, I would say, in
Mm-hmm.
terms
Mm-hmm.
of like figuring out, oh dang, this is actually kind of interesting. That
Mm.
game, for those who haven't played it, is a platformer with an incredibly in-depth level editor and just like general sort of game engine type feel to it. It's a very in-depth game, especially for a kids game, because we have modern sort of game creation tools like Mario Maker, but Mario Maker really doesn't let you get into the same depths that game did. People have like recreated first-person shooters in that game, and that game is
Mm.
a platformer. Like
Yeah.
it's very impressive what people have managed to do in that sort of engine. Unfortunately, I think that all the servers for that game are down there, so I can't really cite that or
Yeah.
anything. But that kind of got me interested in a lot of the basic ideas of like, okay, this is how you put together a decent game. And I would remember when I was playing a lot of the community levels thinking, damn, these suck. And I always thought I could do that way better. I could do that way better. And that sort of, I grew up a little bit, and over time, due to that, I stopped playing that game. I just had other stuff to do with my life and other games to sort of focus on. And by games to focus on, I mean, studies to miss out on and games to cheat them for.
Of course.
And one thing that got me interested was, for a little sort of brief period of my life, I was really into like online games for a bit. Stuff like MMOs, stuff like MOBAs, stuff like competitive games, or just like multiplayer games in general that had like very consistent patch cycles for how they would develop stuff.
Yeah.
And really early on, I found myself like quite interested in not just the actual changes that were happening to the games that I was playing, but the justifications and reasonings for them. I specifically remember, I don't remember the game, but I specifically remember there was an incident where I think it was a weapon I was using in a game got pretty heavily gutted, and I was really confused why they did that. And I remember going to the patch notes, because that's where I would find out what happened, because I was a kid and I didn't realize, they actually changed these things between versions and stuff. I didn't realize that the concept of that even. And I went there, and there was this really long, thoughtful 2-paragraph explanation as to, damn, this thing is just not kind of conducive to the current way that the game is being played, listing out a bunch of reasons as to why that was the case, and then talking a little bit about like, this is a temporary measure. We're basically taking this out back and putting two between the eyes with this thing, and we're going to fix it up a bit later and figure out a new path for it. And I remember being kind of, I don't want to say like I had a light bulb moment when that happened, but I was like, that much thought really goes into these things,
Yeah.
And then that snowballed into, well, what would I do if I did that? What would I do if I
a dangerous thought. Yeah.
And then I started writing a bunch of documents in my spare time in high school that were just like essentially custom changes to things I'd like to see, or even custom items inside of games, or custom characters in games, or like that type of thing inside of a game. And I remember specifically enjoying tying, for example, narrative to mechanics. Some of my fondest ideas that I would sort of work through was doing a bunch of Darkest Dungeon mods, where I would create characters and not characters, they're like class characters. They're weird classification in that game, but like creating those and then modding them in, and then figuring out, oh, hey, this is all just very modular. That like the way that stuff works in that game in terms of like putting together different character abilities or different attacks is literally just grab this bit and then plug this bit into it, and then you've got a new thing. You've got a new thing that works and does something interesting. So yeah, I sort of got a bit of an interest in how games are developed beyond launch, and then that eventually led me down the pipeline to what I think a lot of people born around my age who get into game design ended up going into, which is the web series Extra Credits. Extra Credits, I don't think they focus on games anymore now, but for a long time, at least a decade, they were like the game dev content creation sort of pipeline for teaching people about like what game development is, and about what game design is, and about like just some general concepts inside of it. I'd still recommend a bunch of their old videos today, although some of them don't hold up the absolute best if you're like working in industry. They are a really interesting sort of way to, I don't want to say brainwash, rewire your head into thinking about games in a different way, and thinking about them as more than just the thing where I shoot the bad guy, or that type of thing. And it got me quite interested in the back end of how these things are sort of made, and it taught me, wow, these things are a lot more complicated than I thought. So naturally, I then decided to make it my career, which was a problem. But in high school, I was suffering a bit of a mental crisis at the time. I'm not going to go too far into it. I was having a lot of difficulty just like sort of keeping up with work, and I wasn't exactly the most happy person in my own life. I ended up dropping out in year 12 and deciding to study at AIE. I was very fortunate they were willing to actually take me in. Very, very lucky. I think it might have been the 70-page Bloodborne analysis essay that I sent in that got me approved.
Yeah, that'd probably do it. So, yeah.
I've actually since talked to the guy who reviewed that entry, because he now works here at RepairFour Interactive, actually. And he was like, yeah, I read through all of that. And that got me started. I took the course very seriously, more serious than I took schoolwork, because it was a bit of a gamble for me at the time, and I would not necessarily recommend dropping out in year 12. Not necessarily, but sometimes things go quite well, and that's how I kind of got into doing game dev a bit more professionally. Starting as sort of like an interest that I did in my spare time, and just like sort of a thing that I had a bit of a creative passion for, sort of evolving as like I understood more about the concepts behind game development and like what goes into it, and then realizing, hey, this is actually really cool. A lot of people that sort of get into game dev, I think, come in with the idea of like, oh, I want to come up with a lot of like cool ideas, or I want to play a lot of games and like tell people what's like best about these parts of the games. That's unfortunately not what the job is. I wish my job was that, but I kind of had, I don't want to say the rare, because I don't want to give myself too much credit, but I had the rare experience of sort of having a bit of a more hands-on experience with what game dev was like actually, rather than like the sort of image that gets painted of it by like, sort of stuff. Sorry.
No, it's good. I always tell people that playing games is one thing, but making them completely different.
Oh boy, it's another thing.
Oh my goodness, whole can of worms there. But sweet. I'm glad you mentioned like my two favorite games, by the way, Darkest Dungeon and Bloodborne. I love those games.
My goodness. Hold on, let me see if I've got something here on the desk. We got I got a couple. I got this actually. Where is it? This is a whirligig fidget spinner.
That's awesome. Okay, yeah.
It's in
the best weapon in Bloodborne. Yeah.
Absolutely. Actually, 100%. I like the Bloodletter a bit more, but that's me.
I get you. I was Tonitrus, I think. The whole...
hell yeah.
Anyway, back to topic. I guess, you mentioned, you dropped out in year 12, you studied through AIE. What was that, I guess, first year of study at AIE like under game design?
So it was pretty interesting. I'd never done like online classes before, because I studied, for reference, I studied online. I studied via the online campus, and I had a great teacher, Peter Chan. I don't think he works at AIE anymore, but he was a great teacher. It was a bit of an interesting experience because the classroom environment was very low stress, I want to say. Like when I started out, I was like a dumb teenager who thought that it was the end of the world if I didn't get exactly perfect grades on everything. I was still under the assumption that higher education worked on the grade system of like, you get an S, you get an A, you get a B, that type of thing. Not how that works. I distinctly remember having at least like 4 chats with Pete, who was my teacher, who was like, Zane, you gotta calm down. Like, you'll be fine. You'll be totally fine. You don't need to put in this much effort. I remember like he asked us to build like a game design like Bible, just as like day one sort of ice-breaking thing. Everyone brought in like a 4-page sort of slideshow talking about theirs. Mine was like 26, which
my goodness,
which was a bit too much. The number one thing that I learned in my first year was, damn, I use too many words. I write too much. I need to use more images, basically.
Gotcha. Yeah,
but it was a very interesting experience. I found learning how to use a game engine pretty interesting. The first year when I was doing it didn't go into a ton of depth on the way that game engines, like how we use them, but it gave me enough to sort of start out like, how do I say, like a launching off point in terms of like understanding what I can do going forward. It was really quite useful. And then also understanding a bunch of the back end side of game dev, which is the stuff that would usually turn off a lot of people, stuff like the back end business management, project management, leadership skills. Those were a big emphasis in that year, and they were incredibly useful. They're still things I use to this day, and still things that help me a lot.
Yeah, awesome. And what was it like for second year as well?
Second year is where I met my eventual teammates in RepairFour. So I met Cameron Murphy, Joshua Ferguson and Bradley Hargraves in my second year in AIE. I think I might have interacted with them in my first year, but I ended up working with them on various projects in year 2, which was a pretty exciting one. Not to like sort of expose myself a little bit live on stream, but I did go in with the intention to like meet some people and like at least work on a project. Like that was my goal. I admittedly had gone in with the intent to like get something out of this more than just a degree. So I was intentionally, I don't want to say a social engineer because that sounds a bit rude. I wasn't, frankly, but I couldn't engineer a social situation if I really wanted to. But I did take a lot of time to like make sure that teams I was working in worked quite effectively. I made sure to like talk to the people I thought were quite nice. And I remember just very quickly, I hit it off with Josh specifically, who I'd worked with on several projects. Josh is one of the programmers at RepairFour and one of the fellow founders. I hit it off with him very early. We just happened to be friends and share a lot of pretty great interests. And Josh ended up working with Cameron on a project. Cameron like became friends with Josh. I ended up meeting Cameron through that. Cameron was a childhood friend of Bradley, who he didn't know was in the course until a bit later. And so we got Bradley on board. I also worked with Brad on a project as well. And that's kind of how, that was like the big highlight of that year, was definitely like meeting other developers from different streams and then getting to work together on stuff. Because in year 1, you still do collaborative projects, but you don't work as much with like your fellow teammates. Like from my memory, all of year 2 was like working with other people and like constantly putting out projects and just like coming out with stuff about the projects.
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of people don't realize how important collaboration is in game dev. Like,
everything.
Yeah, 100%. It's so insanely important, and like things like major production and stuff like really help with that. Do you remember what you did for major production?
I do. So we made a roguelike card game, roguelike card game dungeon crawler based on Final Fantasy Tactics.
Oh my goodness.
It was ambitious to say the least.
Yeah.
That game, so the reason we went with that kind of project is that we had 3 programmers on the team. So we were like, we need to get these guys something to do. One of the guys pitched a card battler game, which was like a very like sort of rudimentary concept. It was just like battle enemies with cards. That was the concept. There was no sort of like idea of like how combat would work, what the game was actually like. So it was my job to sort of translate that into something that we can actually do. We all happen to be pretty big fans of like the old FF Tactics games and just like turn-based tactics games as a whole. So we decided to work in that element to the game, and we came out with something I think pretty interesting, although that game was a technical nightmare to develop for. It turns out making a like interactable UI system, like like a hand of cards that also works on like a grid-based system is really complex.
I can imagine.
Like you'd play a card, right, and it would have a set amount of range, and that range would be like 3, so it would be 3 tiles. And then early on we realized 3-tile range is like the whole map because it's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like on this angle, but then also diagonally it's 1, 2, 3, which is like that's a lot of range. So we quickly realized a lot of the follies of how we sort of inherently built it. There were a lot of questions that got answered a bit later. We were definitely a bit ambitious as well, I will say. We were definitely a little bit ambitious with the project. We ended up finishing it to a pretty decent standard, I think. We ended up finishing it with 2 bosses, I think 4 or 5 different enemy types, and about 40 cards or so. A game that I'd honestly really like to revisit at some point. I don't know if I named it yet. It's called Under Claddenheim. I don't think anything's up about it at the moment. But
Claddenheim. Okay, yeah. That's super cool.
It's like pretty old prototype, probably up somewhere on like itch or something. But it's like it was a fun little project to work on, and it taught me a lot about like art, especially like about how long it takes art assets to be created and stuff.
Yeah, can imagine, right? 40 different cards,
Because that
did you
game
say?
was, yeah, 40 different
Yeah,
cards. Each has a visual effect, enemies with
yeah.
animations, different attack animations for things, then
Mm.
like animations for like moving. Like we eventually by the end of it, we were just like, okay, then we're not going to have moving animations. We're not going to
Yeah,
have
yeah.
animations for all this stuff because we'd
Mm.
like intentionally designed it to some extent around the idea that okay, this is a pretty complex project that's going to require a lot of work from all of us, but we didn't
Mm.
quite realize how much until a lot later, and we also didn't realize how many technical issues we'd run into.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Damn, okay. Jeez, that's a full-on project. That's really unique, though. I don't think I've seen another major
No,
production like
there's a
that.
reason you haven't seen another one.
Maybe for the best, but I'm keen to try it at some point. That'd be cool.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sweet. And then I guess segueing into the next steps, which is you did kind of the optional third year at AIE, which is the graduate diploma in
Yes.
management learning. Can you tell us a bit about
Yep.
that?
So, for those who don't know, AIE's like main sort of course is a diploma, advanced diploma, double degree, and then after that, students are you have to apply for it. It's I don't know how to phrase it properly, but you have to apply for it basically.
Hmm.
And you apply for it with a team or with you'll meet people there. I think generally you want to apply with people, but
Mm.
you apply with people, and the idea of that course is instead of focusing on the actual like game dev side of things, you learn about business development and you learn about here's how you build a business from the ground up in the games industry. Here's the stuff that causes 99% of indie businesses to fail, and here's just some general advice on what you're going to need to do to like get investors, how you're going to need to build a team environment, how you're going to upscale the team environment, how you're going to work inside of like a business, legal stuff, really importantly,
Mm-hmm.
legal stuff, a lot of that, which was great, and a lot of just like long-term planning stuff, market research, all the technical back-end stuff that would scare off most people, but
Mm.
it's really really useful, and I probably credit that course with like why RepairFour is like still kind of operating. If we didn't go through that, we'd probably be pretty lost on a lot of this stuff, especially with regards to taxation, I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah, yeah.
And like registering an ABN, for example, as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's really catered more for like, yeah, people that want to start their own business sort of thing, like start their own indie studio, that sort of jazz.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, sweet. Cool. And I guess with all of this build up out of the way, let's talk about what you are currently,
Oh boy.
yeah, what you guys are currently working on at RepairFour, which is Onigatana.
Yep. So Onigatana, this is the big one for sure. So we've been working on this for about, I want to say ever actually since the GDML, although again in part time because we have jobs and we have life that we're attending to. This is a retro Doom-like hack and slash FPS set in Japanese mythology, where you are an undead samurai come back from Jigoku to slay a bunch of yokai that have infested your town and defeat the warlord who killed you. And as you can see, we've got some images here from the demo that we put out a while ago, the public demo. And oh boy, what questions do you have about it, huh?
Yeah. I guess tell us, yeah, a bit more about it. What's like gameplay and stuff like look like?
So Onigatana, I describe it as a Doom-like, which is not really a term I've seen anyone else throw around, but it's the easiest way of saying that it's a retro shooter. The game is very much based on a retro shooter template where you're very fast, you don't have reloading, you are running around these arena-like structures, searching for keys, finding new parts of the level, and then completing the level by the end. There's a big emphasis on speed in this game. We spent a really long time getting the player controller to feel good and to make movement feel fast, snappy, and responsive, and we think that's paid off pretty well. You can do stuff like slide hopping, you can strafe jump, you can grapple around the map, you've got dashing, slide increases the momentum. There's like a bunch of different movement options you have to go through levels. Unfortunately, a bit hard to convey in still images, but the movement is one of the biggest factors. And the other most notable part about this game is that you're a samurai, you don't got guns. You have the titular Onigatana, which you can see the player holding here. And the Onigatana has, instead of different guns in this game, you'll collect different stances, and stances function as sort of elemental ability sets for the sword. So you have fire stance, lightning stance, ice stance, that all do different sort of things and have ability kits that are designed to complement each other and do various different things. So like my favorite ability in the game currently is lightning stance has a recall ability that You activate it, and when you start running around, there's like these beacons that get placed behind you as you run. And then when the ability ends, your character does like a clap, and then you freeze time and go back along the path you went, and you zap everything on those anchors. It's very, very fun to use. We've probably got a video of it a bit later. But
yeah.
For example, like the different stances are meant to accomplish different sort of gameplay fantasies and give you a bunch of different varied options. So while there aren't like 50 different guns in the game, you have a bunch of different stances that all have like 5 or 6 different abilities on them that can do like various different things and be comboed in unique ways, taking a lot of inspiration from like character action games like your Devil May Cry's and your Bayonettas for like how that's going to work. A lot of people have drawn comparisons to games like Ultra Kill from our demo, and just like that was one of our inspirations, so that makes us pretty happy.
Nice. That's awesome.
Sort of very stylish, like retro FPS game with a lot of movement and just like constant action.
Sick. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you mentioned stances, because let's talk about the first one in the list, which is Fire Stance. So tell us a bit about it.
Fire Stance is no nonsense damage stance at the moment. I will note that like all the stances are sort of subject to change as we sort of balance stuff around. One of the stances especially is going to get changed quite a bit. We saw the first ability, the Q ability, is like a fireball that causes like a cluster bomb explosion when you throw it. This one is pretty funny. It's a bit hard to keep up with it because this is like for reference, this is a YouTube short that we've just ported, so it's a bit hard to keep up with it. Q ability throws the Inferno Orb, boom, and then at a leveled up version, which you'll unlock later in the game, it releases a bunch of balls around you as well. E ability is Blaze Burst. This is just like an AoE damage ability that pushes enemies away. That one's going to get reworked, in case you're wondering. It's a bit lame at the moment. We're hoping to make it a bit more exciting. We have some fun ideas for it, let me say that. But the charge attack for this stance, I think, is my favorite thing on this stance, which is you hold left click and then you sort of slash the ground. And then when you hit the ground, a giant like pillar of flame comes out of it. And like the ground actually like opens up to do it. The animation's a little bit scuffed at the moment, but we have some like tech behind the scenes of like it's going to be opening like a crater in the ground as it happens. And oh man, it's a lot of fun to mess around with. This is the simplest stance. You press an ability and they die. And when you parry stuff as well, because there's a parrying mechanic in this game, when you parry stuff in Fire Stance, you set everything around you on fire.
That's cool. That's a nice touch.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Sweet. Well, you mentioned before as well Lightning Stance. So tell us about
Lightning
this one now.
Stance. This is Speed Stance. Ignore that attack animation. It's placeholder. But charge attack is pretty simple. You dash to an enemy and you hit them for a lot of damage. Lightning Stance is a mechanic called Electrify, where a couple of different things will electrify enemies, and you'll get bonus effects when you hit electrified enemies with stuff. So, for example, the parry actually electrifies stuff when you hit them. And then, for example, abilities like Raijan's Fury do much more damage to electrified enemies. This ability shoots out a projectile, and then you will turn into a cloud and jump down on the enemy from the projectile. So it's kind of like a teleport where you teleport above them and like strike them down from the sky. And this is the ability I was talking about before. This is the Electric Echo. So we see we're running around, we go back, bam. Everything along the path just gets eviscerated by the lightning. And if you move really quickly, you can place more of the anchors, so it like ends up doing a lot of damage if you end up moving really fast. We wanted to sort of time movement to damage somehow.
Yeah. Sweet. Okay, cool. And that brings us to, I believe, your last stance, which is
Ice Stance. When I talked about some stuff getting changed, this is the one that's going to get reworked because we found in testing that it's a bit too complex for people to understand and a bit low reward. However, this is my favorite stance. with that being said, this is my favorite stance. Ice works around this mechanic called Frostbite, where Ice has a variety of attacks that will apply the Frostbite effect to enemies. So like here, for example, you can see they get iced up. Frostbite slows enemies over time. And when enemies have Frostbite on them, you can interact with them in a couple fun different ways. The main way, if we go back to here, Avalanche. Avalanche launches a blast with the sword that deals a crap ton of damage to enemies that have Frostbite. It doesn't actually hit enemies that don't have Frostbite. It doesn't do much damage to them. But enemies with Frostbite explode, and they'll spread Frostbite to more enemies. So you kind of just get to have this nice sort of rampage effect. The ice bomb here is another sort of ability that sets up frostbite. This actually is a fun little example of something that we found during testing. So ice bomb was originally a pretty underwhelming ability people found, where it just like sort of plonked it down and people were just like having trouble finding a way to use it. So I think Josh just randomly one day was like, hey, what if you could hit it like a baseball bat? And then I was like, put that in.
That's cool. Yeah.
And then that has since become the identity of the ability. You like plop down an orb and then you smack it with the sword and then it like launches it away like a projectile. So it's one of the only ways to get like a projectile that like does significant damage. And then you get a lot of fun stuff out of it.
Yeah, right. Sweet. Well, I'm going to leave the videos to keep playing in the background and stuff.
Yeah, of course.
But you mentioned before, like inspirations and stuff and drawing parallels to Ultra Kill and stuff. Yeah, tell me a bit more about, I guess, what inspired you guys to make a game like this?
So most of my team is old.
Damn, doing them dirty like that.
They're gonna kill me for saying that. No. So I was a big fan of the sort of neo retro shooter movement that started happening a few years ago with studios like New Blood and games like Dusk, Ultra Kill, those types of games. And we had previously wanted to do a game in this sort of style, or we had a game originally that we were developing that I can't give too much info on because we might revisit the concept a bit later. We originally wanted to make a game that was like very low priority list and like very easy to put out just so we could put something out, which I would advise. I want to make it clear to everyone who's like watching this, if you're interested in doing this, put out like a low effort game. Don't kind of do what we're doing where we're actually building like a really complex game as our first project. Put out something low effort, but we ended up kind of falling off that project and burning out quite a bit because it wasn't really what we wanted to be doing. So we ended up doing a brainstorming session with each other where we took a bunch of ideas that sort of came down. And one of the ideas that came out was this idea of a roguelike where you kill everything in one hit and you die in one hit, and you're a guy with a sword running through an endless like temple thing. That combined really well with another person's concept, which was, I will name myself as this person. I don't know how I came up with this idea. I came up with this idea of you are a Japanese samurai in a eldritch horror, like ruined world, basically, and you have a tentacle for an arm.
Right.
And it was a first-person shooter where you could grab things with tentacles. I don't know where that one came from.
Yeah, someplace deep,
somewhere deep-seated. But it was like this visual idea of like samurai with a sword, and then you could use the tentacles to like grab and pull enemies to you, or like that type of thing. Like sort of atmospheric, more dark and grim sort of setting, you know. But those two ideas sort of merged, and we came up with this idea of what if we wanted to do a samurai retro shooter? How would that look? And then we kind of got lost in the sauce from there. We decided we wanted to make a game that was kind of like Dusk and Ultra Kill, and we wanted to make like an exciting retro shooter where we could release it episodically and build like these individual like level sets and then have those be released over time when we're developing the game. And that's sort of how it evolved from there. Individual mechanics came on with over time. We went through like 7 different revisions of how the grappling hook of this game works, including one revision where we just took it out. And generally, we just had this sort of concept sitting, and then over time we've refined it into something we're pretty happy with and developing into something a bit more substantial.
Sweet, awesome. You've so you've talked a fair bit about your colleagues, the other founders of RepairFour. Tell us a bit about them. So what's the team comp look like at the moment? So
the team comp at the moment is currently, so when we started out, it was myself as designer, Bradley as an artist, Josh and Cameron as programmers. We very quickly learned that this is a pretty small team, even in like an indie setting. This is a really small team to work on a project of this magnitude. Josh was, when the project initially started, Josh was the most experienced in terms of programming and sort of took Cameron under his wing, and sort of Cameron went off to like sort of grow his own style of programming and like learn his own way of doing it. And now they're like really great at working together, and they're both really talented at what they do. And I was left to fend for myself in design, which was a lot of learning to communicate with people and like put it into words. I have a story I like telling where I remember when I asked Josh to build me a player controller, I was like, build me a player controller that moves, has a double jump, and can slide. And it was like, I'll do that in less than 24 hours. And I was like, damn, this game will be easy to make. Then I got the player controller into my hands, and it was the worst thing I've ever played in my life. it was awful.
Yeah.
And it was from there that I learned, like, okay, so I need to communicate the exact specifics of how all this is going to work. And we learned together a lot. Here's how we're going to develop an actual game. Like, the intricacies of that are a lot more complex than just it can move. We actually gave a talk on this like last year, I think, talking about how movement works in this game. But after that, over time, I remember sharing like Onigatana with a lot of the people around the AIE campus at the time, because I've been hired as a teacher at AIE, and I just have a lot of contact with the other teachers there. And Dan Beaumont, who was a teacher I worked with in my second year of teaching at AIE, he ended up taking quite a liking to the project, Dan being a long-time AIE teacher and developer, and he ended up joining our team as a permanent member, so technically RepairFour now, but you know, ended up joining our team, and he's working with me as a designer and also a project lead, as well as I've had a lot more busy stuff on my hands, so having that project leader role split between the two of us has been really, really useful. Just having another sort of insight into it. We have a couple other people that are currently contracted and a couple of people that we're currently talking to, so I probably can't talk too much about them, but we're currently looking at expanding our art team, because poor Brad has the job of creating all these 3D models and animations, and all the stuff you see on screen right now is actually like Brad's doing, aside from maybe a few. There's the icons on the bottom left are placeholder icons from just like an asset pack, but all the VFX you see here are either made by Cameron or Brad, and then all the animations and models are made by Brad, which is this is a lot of work.
100%
for one guy. And like these models as well are made by him. That skull model is placeholder. Like a lot of the stuff was made by Brad, and we're hoping to get some people to support him. So that's sort of the current state of the team.
Yeah, nice, awesome. Remind me again, how long has the team been around for now?
Team has been around for 2 years now, I think. We've been working on stuff together for 2 years.
Awesome, hell yeah. And this is a question I like to ask because I'm also a designer, and you're a designer, so I get to ask this question, which is great. Which is, in your opinion, what makes a good game designer?
This is a really tough question. It's a long question that has like a lot of potential answers to it. I always like to say it's a mixture of being able to talk to people well and communicate with people well, and just like not just come up with ideas, but interpret people's ideas and make them work inside of a system. Coming up with ideas is not my job or any game designer's job. Our job is to make the vision of the team succeed and keep the project on track. So being able to communicate with people and being able to put your concepts down into Word is critical. And the other thing I like to say, and this is probably my more, I guess, controversial take, is a good game designer is someone who does something with their life outside of games. Which, when I say that, I don't mean like it's not your job or that it's not something you have a massive hobby for, but that you have interests outside of game dev that you also kind of pursue and also engage with. I find that having a more learned experience and just having more inspiration to draw from is really helpful for just kind of staying grounded and also just getting a lot better of a creative flow going between people. I draw a lot of my inspiration from places like music and reading and writing and a couple of different places outside of the gaming sphere. It's just important to have sort of, I think, stuff outside of games that you're also interested in if you're working as a designer, just because drawing everything from games can kind of create a bit of a feedback loop where
100%.
you end up like copying other games, and like everything you end up making is just too gamey. That sounds weird to phrase, but I feel like maybe some people will connect with that. Like sometimes you end up making something that feels too much like a video game. It doesn't really end up feeling like an experience or something like something that people want to actually engage with. It's kind of complicated topic.
Yeah, I get you though. I get you. Yeah, nice. And I guess along that same vein, do you have any, I guess, recommendations for any like budding game designers?
get started now. Start writing stuff. Just like put it down into words. Start thinking about stuff and start talking to developers nicely. Start being. I think that a good way to sort of, if you're interested in doing development, a good way to start is to, instead of when you, this is like a really high concept idea, but when you play a game next, and when you encounter something that you don't like or that you really like in a game, think about why the developers might have made the decision for it to work that way beyond it was good and it was bad. Think about how it connects to the wider web, and then write about it and just like think about how it was done that way. Get yourself into that mindset and just start kind of building stuff, honestly. The best way to get into this industry is just to build stuff and just to meet people through building stuff. There's a lot of communities in Australia for meeting game developers, places like Game Plus, the Game Developers Conference, and PAX as well are great places to meet people in the industry. But the best advice I can give is just write stuff down, start talking to people, and build stuff, make stuff.
Yeah, sweet. That's awesome. Yeah, that's great advice. Cool. I think we'll let some Q&A come through. So if anyone in chat has any questions, thoughts, concerns, now's the time to air it out. We'll answer some general questions. I'm actually going to throw a curveball at you that I briefly mentioned before, which is Unreal or Unity. Yes, the age-old debate.
So complete disclosure. Onigatana is developed inside of Unity. Yeah. I have been working in Unity for about 4 or 5 years of my life now. I've been working in Unreal recently for my job for about 2 to 3 months now, which is why I can wholeheartedly say Unity is the fucking worst. Unity's not bad at all, because I would still end up recommending Unity, especially if you wanted to get your toes dipped into game development. But if I had to pick one, if I could go back in time and tell my younger self anything, it would be develop this game on Unreal. Make this game in Unreal. It would have saved us so much time. Unreal, admittedly, this is just going off of my animosity towards Unity more than my love for Unreal. But engines are quite similar, but from what I've messed with an Unreal, it's a lot more user-friendly and just handles the stuff that Unity kind of just makes a nightmare to handle.
Gotcha.
I generally like Unreal a bit more nowadays, after having messed around with it for my job and learning a bit more about what it does. I used to be a big Unity defender, but not anymore.
Gotcha. Yeah, I guess a follow-up question is, have you had any unique challenges with the development of Onigatana?
Oh boy. What isn't a unique challenge with this freaking project? The biggest one I think for us has been, this is a pretty ambitious project in terms of scope for a essentially 4-person team to be undertaking on part-time hours with no money. And that has always been a constant sort of worry for us, is like, will we get lost and will we end up stopping? Will we end up just like not finishing this? Because we want to finish this. This is going to get done. We're going to get this done. But it's been a bit nerve-wracking this whole time, being like, is one of us just going to wake up one day and go, I don't want to keep doing this anymore. I can't do it. I'm going to run out of money if I keep doing this. And it is a lot of effort for no money at the moment. Like, we're putting in like dozens of hours a week for essentially nothing at the moment. And that's, game dev is obviously, like, if I went into this career, I wouldn't go into it for money. I would have gone in for it for my passions and what I want to do. But like wasting all that, not wasting, but like dedicating all that time towards something that's currently just like eating my time and not giving me anything to show for it aside from a demo that I can present to other game developers to see that's cool is pretty disheartening. It's a lot. And there's been multiple times like across development where I've been like, I could just take more hours at work and get rewarded for it. And I would be more comfortable, which is like pretty daunting prospect, to be honest. It's very mentally taxing. There's obviously like a bunch of other like miscellaneous sort of problems during development that we've encountered, like bugs and like funny stories and like issues with development. But like, I think that the most telling problem that we always face is like finding that drive to keep developing such a long-term project, which thankfully we consistently manage to find again and again. Don't This is not my manifesto before I suddenly quit working on
Yeah,
this project.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
it is often difficult to find that motivation day to day to just wake up and be like, yep, I'm going to clock my 5 hours of work on the project today or my 8 hours of work on the project today, and
Mm.
then go to my regular job straight after and like keep doing that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But taking the step and, creating a company, going indie and stuff, it's a hard thing to do.
Yeah,
You've
for
got to put
sure.
a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it, but you do it out of passion, out of,
Mm,
it being what you want to do and all of that jazz.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
sweet.
Definitely.
Oh, goodness me, I'm getting a few questions now from chat. So
Ah, lovely.
let's see. So I've got a question from Jamie, who's asking
Hmm.
about, I guess, getting employment in the gaming space within Australia. So a bit about the Australian industry. How big is it here in Australia, and like
So
yeah, how easy is it to get a job?
the honest truth is that Australia is not the biggest game development sort of capital in the world. That would
Mm-hmm.
definitely go to like Canada or America or Japan
Mm-hmm.
or those like other larger places. However, the Australian games industry is pretty rapidly growing, especially in the indie space. And getting a job inside the industry is, we say this a lot. Like it's not necessarily just about like what you know, it's also about who you know and making connections with people. My best advice is honestly to get a bit of a portfolio, like put something together that you can show to people and be somewhat proud of, and show that you have like skills in this field. And then once you've got that, start talking to people at events like PAX or go to places like Game Plus and just start like communicating with people and get sort of connected with people, because one of those people is going to be who gets you your job.
Mm-hmm.
One of those people is likely going to end up doing something that you're going to get called on or that you're going to get hired into, rather than actively sort of seeking it out. There's a lot of places like Mighty Kingdom and a lot of places even around like Sydney, Canberra, that like will have openings for like design jobs and like dev jobs. Places like EA Fire Monkeys as well is actually a pretty good example of that. But the single best way to get a job in the industry is to talk to a lot of people and be friendly with a lot of people and just generally make a lot of connections. That can be quite tough. My suggestion is to visit spaces that have a lot of developers in them, obviously. Places like AIE courses, that's how I met mine. But like places like Game Plus, there's a bunch of meetups across like Australia for like talking to developers, and like stuff like Pizza and Pixels exists in a couple of different cities, which is
Mm-hmm.
great. Events just like chat to people that are in this space are probably the best way to do it in terms of the indie scene. But in terms of the AAA scene, the best way to get a job is build like a prototype like mobile game or something and apply to everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, sweet. Thank you so much for that.
No
We've
problem.
got any more? I might quickly do a quick run through of the AIE website and stuff and talk next steps while
Yeah, of
we get a
course.
few more questions come through. So I'm going to pull up this screen. So this here, everyone in chat, is the AIE website. You can find that at aie.edu.au. All of the information you could ever need for AIE related stuff is on here. If you go to courses, just click it. This here is every single course we pretty much offer. So along the top here are the 5 different streams we teach. You got filmmaking, VFX, game art and animation, game design, which is what Zane studied, and then game programming. And then you've got different level courses. So introductory courses, beginner courses, career courses, which is a diploma and bachelor's, and then GDML, which is the business learning graduate diploma that Zane studied. Another really cool tab that I like to talk about here is the Showcase tab. So if you go to Showcase and you go to Events, you can see, what we've got coming up, just for like in-house events and different types of stuff we're running here at AIE. But another really cool one is the Live Streams tab. So there we are, there at the top. But this is super good because every live stream we ever do is archived essentially onto our website. So if you're interested in, say, design specifically, which is what this stream would fall under, you can filter by tags, and then you'll see, all of the design related ones. Yeah, so super great resource. And if anyone ever has any questions, you can just hit the ask a question, and those questions go to me as well as the admissions team, and we're always happy to answer questions. And then, of course, the apply now button. Doesn't matter what level course you're interested in, whether it's a holiday introductory course or if it's even our bachelor's. The first step is to just hit apply now and then select the course. But yeah, everything can do through the website. Super easy, super smick. But yeah, I'm going to bring me and Zane back up for any sort of extra questions. I can see there's a few. Give me a sec. Yeah, okay, cool. There's no dramas. I think chat is sated for now, which is great.
Oh,
It's very rare.
fantastic.
Yeah. We've appeased chat. Yeah. Yeah, I guess
great.
for people that are interested in, RepairFour and Onigatana, where can people find you?
So we have a Discord and a YouTube channel. I'll just grab the YouTube channel for you real quick, just to promote it if you would like. The YouTube channel links to all of our socials, like our Discord and our Twitter account. We have a link on that to find our socials here. Join our Discord, watch our videos, subscribe,
Yeah.
all that sort of stuff. Just like get talking to us. We're pretty active inside that little Discord and like talking to people and just like generally being pretty open with our development process. We are really happy just to chat to anyone and just like get feedback on the project. You can play actually the demo for Onigatana right now via the Discord. We have a link to that inside that. So if you're interested in playing an early prototype for the game, feel free to check that out. Our Twitter has updates for our devlogs and things. We're aiming to release devlogs once every 2 weeks or so, every fortnight. We've taken a bit of a small break from that just because we've released the demo recently, and that demo has taken up a lot of our time, so we're taking a little bit of a break. But best place to find us is on our YouTube and in our Discord and our Twitter account.
Sweet, awesome. And
Which,
so I was just gonna ask: is the YouTube RepairFour interactive, or is it Onigatana? What are we?
YouTube RepairFour. It's RepairFour.
RepairFour?
RepairFour. Yep. I've sent you a link for it. It's at RepairFour on YouTube, and the Twitter is at RepairFour Interactive. I should just make sure that's the case because it might have been something a bit weird. It's repair_4 on Twitter.
Gotcha.
The word 4 as well. At repair_word4.
Sweet. Easy. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone.
If you search Onigatana, it'll probably come up.
Yeah. Onigatana with a G and not a K. Because that caught me the first time.
Onigatana,
Yeah. Sweet. Easy. Well, that pretty much wraps everything up. Thank you, everyone in chat, for tuning in for this live stream.
Thanks very much.
Yeah. Thanks for being here, Zane. And
thanks for having me. It was very enjoyable.
Yeah. Awesome. Sweet. Well, we will see everyone later. And yeah, have a good night, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.